What's going on, guys? Sickbid, aka Meat, coming at you with another Draft League Presents. Today we're going to be going over Gliscor. Okay. Gliscor is a really good Pokemon. Very good at what it does, and we'll get into a little bit more of what it wants to do most of the time. And but from my perspective, where I think it should go, I think in this league it says that it's about 18 points. I think it's with the removal, if hidden power is removed, I think this thing gets a lot stronger, because it is it has a 4 times weakness. So I do think it gets a little bit stronger if there's no hidden powers. But with triple axle being put into the game, that ice move, that a lot of the time is going to be 120 power. Excuse me. I think that can be kind of tough for it. But I think, in my opinion, I think it's like a 16-point Pokemon. I think it's right in here with maybe Rilla, Volk, Kommo-o. Very good supporting Pokemon, more so than really doing a whole bunch of damage. But very good Pokemon. They say it's 18 points. I would never take it at 18 points. I would never take it over Selly, Chomp, Lando, Mega, or Lop, Sizor. I would never take it over any of these Pokemon. Maybe Zera. And definitely over Zapdos, in my opinion. But I don't think it is an 18-point Mon per se. But I don't think Zapdos is either. So that's just my opinion. So I think it is a probably like 3rd, 4th round. If it's an 8-man league, maybe. It depends on where it is point wise, but if it's a little bit lower, I'm gonna take it earlier. If it's a little bit higher, I probably won't take it at all. But if it's still there, and it's like tier 2, kind of, it's the top of the tier 2s. In my opinion, it's the top of the 15-point, 16-point tiers. So that's just my opinion. I've taken Gliscor in the 1st round. When I was later on in the draft, but I think it's really good value in tier 2. One of the best mons in tier 2 is literally always going to be drafted in tier 2. So that's just something to think about. But let's get into why I think it should be drafted where it should be. So we have Gliscor, the ground flying Pokemon. Okay, very good typing. Sharing its typing with a couple of different mons. Lando T being one of the most prominent ones of ground and flying. So electric and ground immunities, which is pretty strong immunities. I mean, one of the strongest immunities in the game. I would say that maybe water is a stronger immunity, or a stronger immunity to have, but electric and ground are pretty good. Resistances to bug fighting and poison, which are really strong resistances for the flying type, because those are all resistances to flying except for ground, for poison. So without further ado, the weaknesses are water and ice. Very weak to ice. Okay. So it's kind of a little bit more difficult to set up with like a weakness policy agility set, even though it has agility, and it can hold a weakness policy. It's a little bit more difficult, but I think it has some merit. It's pretty interesting. It's got really good bulk. Actually, before I talk about the bulk, let's talk about the abilities here. So you have 3 abilities. Really, you're just going to be using one. Actually, I think this is banned in all the others. So you're going to be using Poison Heal. Now, this is a fantastic ability, one of the best abilities in the game, because one, you can switch into all the other status moves after you've been toxic or poisoned. There's a gnat, sorry. And so you can switch into Thunder Wave, Sleep, any other, even toxic. So because you're already poisoned, you can soak up all the other statuses. So it's a really good, pivot in terms of, switching into resisted hits, and taking in status moves on bulkier Pokemon, for instance, Registeals and different things like that want to just toxic you and kind of wear you down with their bulk. And not only do you soak up But if your Toxic Orb is popped, which is the item that you're going to be running most of the time, if your Toxic Orb is popped on you and you do get poisoned or you switch in on a Toxic or something, that heal is going to be 1/8, so double what you would get from leftovers. Double, which is really, really big. So you would not lose any HP from being poisoned. You would actually, in turn, be healed 1/8. Okay, so that's really, really strong. All right. So talk about Gliscor's stats. Really, really, really strong stats here. Okay, so special attack, never need it. Don't worry about it. 45, that's a great thing to have your lower stats so that the overall bulk of the Pokemon can be a lot better. 95 in speed makes this not a crazy slow wall, right? It gives it, and that can spread out a lot of your speed tiers as well, because being right below the hundreds, right above the 80s, very, very strong speed there. And then really, really good defense. This is a very, very strong defensive pivot, switching into things like fighting and ground physicality, and then electric. A lot of the time that's going to be special, but for the off chance, Zero Aura or Wild Charge Coco, different Pokemon like that want to run physical, you can soak up a lot of those hits. But fighting type is really the one that you're going to be switching into quite a bit, and ground, fighting and ground. So something to think about there. Special defense, not terrible, but not that great. And then 75 HP is pretty good. Right below those genies here there. 95 attack, that's fairly strong and strong enough to have not a lot of investment or none at all, and still be able to deal enough damage to break through subs, or deal enough damage to electric types that they don't want to stay in. So that's something really to think about with the stats. I think they're very, very good. It's a very, very good Pokemon. It's taken very highly for a reason. And the Battle Company have it an 18. You already know my opinion on that, but very, very strong Pokemon. Let's get into a couple of sets here. So we have a Swords Dance set, able to double its attack, or actually, 1.8 or 1.9 times its attack. That's very strong boosting move. And then Facade will always be double, so it's always 140 base power because of your Toxic Orb. So what happens is with this set, and with most sets for Gliscor, is that you are going to switch in, take that hit, get your Toxic Orb to poison you, and then heal for 12%. And if it's a resistant hit, sometimes you can heal to full, because the Pokemon only did 12% to you. So that's something interesting to think about. And this one is a really, really special defensive set here. You can see almost max HP, and then almost max special defense with a little bit of speed to creep, so that you're not creeped, I guess. So that could be interesting. And then Swords Dancing, and then Facading or Earthquaking if it's just really good stab coverage, and then Facade for anything that you want to hit neutrally, except for like ghost types, And then Roost, it has reliable recovery in Roost. Most of the time you see Gliscor as like a pivot with, it's got Stealth Rocks and Defog, like Lando. A little bit better in terms of sticking around because of the Toxic Orb and the Roost. But very, very strong Pokemon. This is a very, very strong set, a very, very common set. So something to look out for if you're ever facing it, or if you want to use it yourself. So here is the pivot, or not the pivot, the kind of Stealth Rocks, kind of sit in on whatever you want to. So this set has a little bit of, a lot of speed into it, but a lot of special defense, almost max HP, which is pretty much what you're going to be doing most of the time, is that max HP, just to try to get that 75 HP all the way up as high as it can go, so that you can, tank kind of scouts. This is a really good scout Pokemon. And very, very strong. Can set up Stealth Rocks, which, if you need a really, really good Stealth Rocker, Gliscor is one of the best. As long as you're not staying in on an Ice type, should be pretty good. Earthquake, Toxic, and Roost, just a really strong tank here in this situation. Just toxicking, spreading spreading status conditions and earthquaking for stab, so that you're not set up on with a substitute and different things like that. Very, very strong set, very, very good set. Got a defog set, so you a lot of the time on your defog set you don't want to run stealth rocks, but I know that I have before on really defensive sets. So I go stealth rock, defog, earthquake, roost. But in this situation, it says knock off roost, defog, earthquake, and let another Pokemon, because you only have 4 move slots here. Let another Pokemon run stealth rocks so they can set it up on maybe a switch or something like that. And then again, this is a really high HP with the same kind of stats. So very, very strong Pokemon. Let's move on here. I did want to talk about one more set before we move on, is an agility weakness policy. Now, I think the only kind of attacks that you're going to want to take if you're anticipating something is going to be a water type attack, because it's only 2 times effective. And so you agility up. Let's say, a water Pokemon, maybe Colossal, wants to just scald you. You take that scald, you get your weakness policy, you're already agility up, and then you just blow through whatever it is with acrobatics, earthquake, knockoff. Those kind of guys can really hurt. And that first move we're going to talk about is acrobatics. It's a stab. Stab acrobatics. Sorry, there's a net. Stab acrobatics could be really strong with weakness policy, of course. Not going to really run aerial ace too much. There's agility here. Aqua Tail could be interesting for some coverage. I don't think I've ever ran Aqua Tail, but 4 times weak to water. Go ahead, Colossal or something like that. Actually, I would run Earthquake for Colossal, but Brick Break is really good for breaking screens. I know that I have brought this versus a Alolan Ninetales, and it's worked out. A little bit later, after I blew the Ninetales away, I was able to Brick Break and take those screens down. So that's something interesting to think about. Also on a Jirachi, I know that I've done that. Bug Bite you're not using, Bulldoze you're not using, Counter's okay. Counter can be used, Cross Poison's a really good move. Defog, of course. Earthquake endures pretty good. Facade is great, 140 base. It says 70 here. It's actually 140 base because of your Toxic Orb, right? So that's something interesting to think about. Fire Fang is good, for those 4 times weak fire Pokemon. I wouldn't say Fire Fang is really the move that you want to be clicking against, but I have seen it ran to success. So pretty good. Ice Fang is interesting. I wish it got Punch. 65 attack, 65 power is not that great. But if you have like a weakened Lando or something like that, it can definitely work out. Iron Tail's pretty good for those fairies, 75 accuracy, so just kind of be wary. Knockoff is really good. That's a lot of the time you're going to be running Knockoff because it's a nice little wall. Poison Jab, of course. Yeah, I would run Poison Jab over Tail and Sting, just my opinion. Actually, it's just better. Let's see here. Rock Polish if you didn't want agility, but same thing. Rock Slide, I'm pretty sure it gets Edge. Yeah, it gets Stone Edge down here, so Rock Slide you don't want to be using too much. Let's see here. Boom, 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 boom. Nope. Stealth Rock, of course. Excuse me, Steel Wing if you want a little bit less power instead of Iron Tail. Iron Tail's 100 power, Steel Wing 70. A little bit more accurate though, 15% more accuracy. Swords Dance, of course. Thief, Taunt is it's a fast taunt user, so that's something to think about. Thunder Fang, Toxic, U-Turn. I don't even know how I haven't talked about U-Turn yet. This is why it's one of the best pivots, because it's able to, defog or stealth rocks, then U-turn out on something a little bit slower than it, and then it's able to get that momentum. Or vice versa, if rocks haven't even been laid yet, you don't need to, you just U-turn out, get some momentum. Very, very strong at that. Also, whenever it comes in, it's so good at using that move U-turn because it's able to tank so many hits with its really nice stats. So you can come in, take that hit from that fighting type. You say, okay, he doesn't want to take an earthquake, that fighting type doesn't want to take an earthquake, so I just U-turn out on whatever's coming in. Very, very strong attack. X Scissor's pretty good. I would almost always run U-turn, except if I needed to hit. What is that sound? That was a weird sound. I would only run X Scissor if I had, like, you know, that weakness policy agility set and I needed to kill, let's say, Hoopa Unbound. You know, something kind of tech like that. So that's really it for the coverage moves for Gliscor. We got one more thing to kind of check out for those Gen 8 League guys, and that is the DLC League to Move. So let's kind of check that out. So we got Gliscor here. Gets Pin Missile. Okay, not really using that too much. Assurance, no. Power Whip is really, really good because it can beat those water types now. You know, and those water types are not just free switch-ins anymore. And then it also gets Psychic Fangs, which is a really, really strong... let's go ahead and look at that real quick because we can't see it otherwise. So Psychic Fangs destroys screens. Okay? Aurora Veil everything. And it goes through it immediately. Okay? So that's pretty interesting. Oh wait, hold on. For the target side of the field before damage is calculated. So yeah. So it goes through it. Not only does it go through it, but it breaks them, right? So that's something really, really interesting to kind of think about is those Psychic Fangs. And then we got another. Oh boy. And then we have Dual Wing Beat, which we can kind of check it out and see what's going on here with the Dual Wing Beat. There it is. So Dual Wing Beat, it's a two-hit move, but it only has 90 accuracy. So that's something interesting to think about. I think Acrobatics is almost always going to be better if you're running that weakness policy set. But it is an 80 base power physical flying move. So it could be pretty good with that 95 attack. And if you're not running that weakness policy set, so you don't want to run Acrobatics, this is definitely a little bit stronger. 90% accurate, but it is a little bit stronger. And you can use that stab for things like Chestnut or Verizion or something like that. I could see the merit. So those are just things to look at. Like I said, Power Whip is the strong one here. Power Whip, Psychic Fangs are the strong moves that I wanted to talk about mostly because those, a lot of the time, a bulky water can come in on Gliscor, not have to worry about anything. Now it's going to be Power Whipped with 120 base power. So we can check that move out real quick. 120 base power with that 95 attack stat. You Sword Stance up, now you're slapping everything. That power really opens up a lot for Gliscor. So that's just something to think about. Let's talk about some pairings to get with Gliscor. So Gliscor has it's not as good on the special defensive side. So you definitely want something that is resistant to ice and water, which in itself is a water type, right? Water resists both ice and water. So having another bulky water, let's say like Toxapex. Toxapex is a really good pair with Gliscor, and it's really, really possible because you see Gliscor here, Toxapex down here at 15 points, so you can go 18, 15, no problem at all, especially if you're in a 16-man. That's definitely doable, which is one of the largest kind of divisions you can be in is a 16-man division. So Gliscor is really good. Corviknight can be really good here. Any steel flying, I mean, Selly and Gliscor is a common pairing. I think Toxapex is a little bit better because Toxapex is weak to Psychic, Ground. That's it, really, right? Psychic and Ground. So with the Psychic and Ground, Psychic isn't resisted here, but Ground is immune. And then Toxapex eats up water and ice type moves. Okay, so one move that you have to kind of look out for now though is Freeze Dry because it's been distributed to a lot of Pokemon vis-a-vis Kyurem. So a couple of different things to look out for there. So Freeze Dry can affect both of those, but picking up a Corviknight or a Celesteela, something like that, a nice little steel type, also goes really well with Gliscor for those ice and water type attacks that it resists. So that's pretty good. Those are pretty good pairings. You don't really want to match this up with a dragon per se too quickly. Now I'm not saying you can't get them back-to-back picks like you go Latios, Gliscor, something like that. But you have to be kind of wary of that ice weakness, because that can become kind of centralizing to your weaknesses. So I would steer away from, the Garchomps, the Zygarde, something that is super, super weak. Tornadus T, that can be kind of a tough one. But I do think that, having a nice little bulky water or a nice little steel type really pairs well with Gliscor. So those are just my thoughts, kind of a couple of pairings that I threw at you to kind of figure what you want to do. So sometimes a nice little fighting type is also kind of nice. So that's something to think about. But I think that's it from me. So that's Sickbid, aka Meek, the Draft League presents. Woo!